the number 3 spot now with this division. And this is where things, I think, could open up a little bit, where we could have some disagreements. But I've got the Vegas Golden Knights in number 3 for me in this division. And I know that there are some concerns about players like Mark Stone and Jack Eichel and others staying healthy. Obviously, with the goaltending, too, it doesn't look like Robin Lehner is going to play this season. So it'll be Logan Thompson, Laurent Brossoit, and they also added Adin Hill. So they've got 3 goaltenders in the mix. But I really like Thompson. He's a young goaltender, especially the way that he played down the stretch for Vegas, trying to get into the postseason. Watched a great game late in the year between Vegas and Dallas. And just seeing Thompson and Jake Ottinger battling it out, 2 young goaltenders, that's who I kind of look at Thompson as, I look at his comparable being Ottinger. I could see Thompson, playing his heart out in a playoff series like what Ottinger did for Dallas against the Calgary Flames. So yes, Vegas lost Max Pacioretty and Dylan Coghlan for literally nothing, future considerations, but this is still a good hockey team, a contender when everybody's healthy, in my opinion. I know I'm not alone there, and I've got Vegas in this number 3 spot, getting back into the playoffs.
Yeah, this is where we're going to start to differ, because I have a team that I'm locked at number 3. You guys are talking about tiers and a lot of switching around. I'm a lock at number 3, and it's not Vegas. Personally, I have Vegas 4, maybe 5. I can swing either way depending on how you guys push me. I think that there's a lot of problems with this team in my mind. And the first one is I am not as confident in their goaltending as Harper is. Obviously, he had a strong season last year, Thompson, but I don't know if it's time to put him in as a starter anywhere. Also, the big caveat is when this team is healthy. This team always seems to be having some sort of issue when it comes to injury. And another one is Nolan Patrick is once again seems like he's dealing with an injury. That's one that wasn't mentioned before, but that's what I'm hearing once again. So I don't know. There's something about this team that I don't like. I think it's maybe the cancer that's starting to grow inside the locker room. That is, no one wants to play there because you sign a contract and get traded, and they kind of disrespect their players. And Robin Lehner is always speaking out about them. Now they have Jack Eichel, who kind of destroyed the Buffalo Sabres almost in their dressing room. It's like, I've got a bad omen about this team. I don't know if that's enough to knock them down to 4 for you guys, but there's something not to love about this team. I don't know. I can't nail it down for you.
Yeah. Well, Case, I'm sorry to have to do this, but I'm going to have to go 2v1 skis here with Harp. And I'm picking Vegas for the 3 spot. Even though I agree with a lot of what you said, I think there are a lot of holes in this team. I think there were some poor decisions made this offseason, giving away Max Pacioretty for nothing just so you can sign Riley Smith and then not address the goaltending, losing your starting goaltender for the entire season. I think were just a few of the blunders, to name a few. But I still look at this team and I think, they can definitely be competitive in this division, which, like we mentioned, is a bit weaker. There are going to be a few teams challenging for those 3 and 4 spots. But I think Vegas, they look at their season last year and they think to themselves, the problem was we just weren't healthy. And assuming things go well and getting Jack Eichel for an entire season, as opposed to, 10 games, 20 games, whatever he played at the end of the year where he just wasn't healthy. Maybe it was more like 30, but he just didn't look like himself. So getting him for a full season, I think makes sense. And same with Stone. I just think there will be a different air around this team, now that they kind of wrote off last season. And, we think about Vegas as a team who missed the playoffs finally, right? Like they were finally bad. They finished 17th in the league. Like they just missed the playoffs by a few points. So I don't think this team has gotten so much worse that now they're fighting for a spot and it's that uncertain. I think there still is some uncertainty surrounding this team, especially in net. But I think, as long as the season goes on here and they get guys like Brossoit back and, because Brossoit and Thompson, is a decent tandem. I don't love Thompson, Hill, Hutchinson, that trio that they're going to have going to start the year. But once Brossoit is back, him and Thompson, I don't mind that tandem at all. I think the comparable to Ottinger, Thompson to Ottinger, may be a stretch, Harp, but I see where your head's at, an up and coming guy who kind of needed to take on a role that became available to him through injuries. So I do have some concerns with this team, but overall, I think they're still going to be in the mix. And the number 3 spot to me makes sense. I'd be willing to move it if it weren't 2v1 skis against you, Case, but we're going to have to do that. So Vegas in the 3rd spot.
My argument isn't so strong against Vegas. It is for
the other team.
Who
I know exactly who you're going to pick.
What I will say about this team is that I think that teams started figuring out how to pick apart this team defensively last year, and that's what we saw. Now they have a weaker goaltending situation. I also think that a lot of people are still living in the past about this team. I think that Riley Smith is not the guy that they brought on first year, second year. I think that William Karlsson's not even close to the guy the first year of Vegas. I think that Marchessault had a great bounce back year, but I don't know if he's going to be at 66 points or whatever he was again this year. There's a lot of questions about this team, and for me, that's enough in my mind to put them lower than the LA Kings.
Yeah, and that's who you have now in the 4th spot. So why don't you talk about them?
Oh, I have them in the 3rd spot.
Yeah, but now because you got beat out 2v1 skis, they're in the 4th spot.
Yeah, this is going to be one of those ones that I clip and I put in my personal diary at the end of the year when the LA Kings actually ended up coming second for some reason. This LA Kings team was a 99-point playoff team last year, and I think they're better this year. They picked up Kevin Fiala now. They still have kind of that same core of forwards. They have guys that took a step last year, and that's what you really needed from them. Adrian Kempe was a whole different player, setting career highs in goals and assists. Iafallo continued to do what he does. They have a 4th line of just kids that are all expecting to blow up. And then there's other ones that are already have taken another step, like Blake Lizotte and Arthur Kaliev. And I don't know, there's a lot to like on forward for this team. And then think about that they were a 99-point team without Drew Doughty for a full season, who was on a Norris Trophy run before he went down with injury. And now you have Jonathan Quick back to prime. I don't know if that's going to continue, but it doesn't matter if it does because they have Cal Peterson as well. I really like this team. I like what they're building. They have maybe the best prospect pipeline in the league, and they're a playoff team. This is the beginning of a Tampa Bay-esque team, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, you'd certainly hope so with all the picks that they've had. They have a lot of good players coming up and a lot of guys who are already on the roster who are good. I love the Fiala ad. I couldn't believe they couldn't get something done in Minnesota. I know the money didn't work, but, maybe it's because you bought out 2 players for like $60 million against the cap. Have to bring that up every time I mention Minnesota. But dude, I like LA, and I actually went back and forth for 3 and 4 here with Vegas and LA. I decided on LA 4th, just because I think you have a lot of players who haven't proven that they are able to take the next step yet. Like a guy like Byfield, what are we going to get from him this season? I'd love to see 50, 60 points. We know he's capable of that, but he just hasn't shown it yet. So to me, and same for guys like Kaliev or, Velarde, etc. So for me, there's just a lot of question marks still. But like you said, team got 99 points last season without their number 1 defenseman, Drew Doughty, who was having an incredible year up until that time he got injured. I had him in fantasy in both leagues. So trust me, I know how fucking good he was. So to me, there's just some question marks. They were a really good team last year. I do think they got better, but I just think Vegas is that team that isn't just going to go away that easily. So we'll have to see.
Before you jump in, Harp, I want to make a counterpoint to Chad's. There's a couple guys that haven't made a step point. I think that, ready for this one, Chad?
Yeah.
You've probably never been told this in your life.
Okay.
I think you're taking the pessimist view here, and I'm taking the optimistic view. And in terms of this debate, Vegas is the pessimist friend. It's old familiar. It's a bunch of guys that have been doing it for a long time, but maybe are on a downswing. Whereas the Kings, the way I'm viewing them is internal competition. You know, I talk about that a lot. I talk about it with the Devils every single year, it feels like. But the internal competition on this team is unbelievable. There's a guy like Alex Turcotte that we haven't even seen get a chance here yet, because there's so many guys in line to be entering this team. I'm so excited to watch their prospect camp and see how that goes. Who's going to make this team? Is Byfield going to step up so he can stay in the lineup? Is Gabe Vilardi finally going to live up to his hype? What about Kupari? Like, all these guys, they're all hunger and eager to get in this team, whereas I don't know if there's that type of competition in Vegas. I think they have, these are the guys we've had for the last 4 years, and then we have this solid bottom six that no one can enter because we like them. We like Carrier, we like Kolesar, or whoever is left on that Vegas team. I can't remember right now. Not Cole. Yeah, Kolesar and
he's there still.
Yeah. All right. I mean, that's my point there. They're just so set in this Vegas team. I don't know. Just not a fan.
Fair enough, Case. I mean, having open competition is a great thing. And you look at this LA lineup, and it's all kids. And then there's some veterans in there, some good quality veterans, obviously starting with Kopitar and Doughty. But, they add Victor Arvidsson and Philip Deneau, who had a great season. Like, you've got two Selke winners right there as your two. I know Deneau hasn't won a Selke yet, but he certainly could. You have him and Kopitar as your two centers. Like, that's just a defensive dream for Todd McClellan. And and then it's all kids. And adding Kevin Fiala, I think he's going to absolutely light it up there. He's a perfect fit. He's a finisher. They're a fast, hungry, exciting team. And the thing that we've seen with LA before is that they're a team that just needs to get in to the playoffs, and then anything can happen. Like, that's all they need, is just get in. Look, they played great against Edmonton. It took them to 7 games. Like, that was a great series. They played really well. Case, you mentioned the back end as well with Doughty out, and just so impressive seeing the guys step up. Sean Dursey, how good he was when he came up, and Mikey Anderson in particular, who I thought was their best defenseman after Doughty went down, and Spence and other guys. And let's not forget they had Sean Walker out for the whole year as well. And, a solid 1-2 tandem too. So, I've got LA in that 4th spot just because there's still a lot of young guys that, we're looking for that next step. But this is a good hockey team, man. Maybe the most fun to watch, the most exciting up-tempo team in the NHL. And I think they're going to get back into the playoffs again. But another year under their belt, they could be a tough out once again. And again, just a team that needs to get in and get playing, and they could go anywhere. Yeah,
I've got kind of 2 more points to make about this team. The first one being that I think they have 10 centers on this team. When I look, when you look at the top 12 or the guys that are expected to play on the team, it's like 10 of them can play center, and they're all pushing out to the wing. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. In my mind, it's a good thing, because I think it's good. That's a Swiss Army knife player, not a winger who you're pushing at center. That's kind of a throwaway comment. The second one, that's kind of my last argument to put them at 3rd, is that I think that by time of the trade deadline, they're going to be very similar in points to the Vegas Golden Knights. The difference is Vegas is not going to be in a position to make this big push for a huge trade at the trade deadline, because they've traded every 1st round pick, every player they've selected 1st round in their whole history. They don't have that surplus of assets to trade for a big booming trade deadline acquisition like LA does. LA is in the best situation, ideal situation out of the whole Pacific Division to go out and make a huge splash at the trade deadline. And I think that is going to be the thing that pushes them above Vegas is their trade deadline acquisition they're going to do with all the assets they have in this team, and maybe some of these prospects that didn't make the opening line roster because they're just not there yet, like a Turcotte would be on the line in my mind.
Yeah, that's definitely a good point, something I didn't consider. And also, as you go along, you've got players developing, these younger guys like Turcotte, who you mentioned, or, whichever one of those guys internally doesn't make the team, or a handful of guys. You can see different combinations all year long and kind of tinker and get your best lineup for playoff time. So that makes sense, kind of internal rentals, as if you will. So I get that. They're going to have a lot of money at the deadline, certainly more than Vegas. Vegas is always up to the cap, and they've got nothing to trade. So good point. I like that. Something to add about Vegas as well is that they added Kessel, which I think isn't nothing. He had a good season last year. Didn't score a ton of goals, but had a boatload of assists in Arizona. And he had that comment saying, I'm happy to go to a team who is actually going to try to win. So
yeah, it's
he's excited to play.
I take it as he's going to be better this year, but there is the two-sided argument to be had there that, maybe he had a good season last year because he was one of the good players there. Yeah. And then the other side of it is he's going to have a better season this year because he has people to play with. So
yeah, there you go. All right. So we got to make a decision here. So the 3 and the 4 spot. Case.
It sounds like Vegas is going third, but I'd like all the listeners to remember that Casey had LA third.
What I will say is that I have these 2 teams and the next 3, for that matter, all in the same tier as teams who, if they made the playoffs, it wouldn't surprise me. If they missed the playoffs, that would be a bit tough. But I've got Vegas third, LA fourth. You could swap them if you'd like, but that was my original ranking. And because we came in 2v1, unless Harp, you're going to flip, that's, I think, how it's going to shake out.
I'm thinking about it. I did like the trade deadline comment, but you know what? I'll stick with it. I do like Vegas, especially if they're healthy in that 3 spot, but I had LA in 4th. So,
and I'll say this too. This is my last comment about this. These 4 teams. So, okay, last year in the Pacific, only 3 teams made the playoffs, right? Because Vegas missed. So Calgary, Edmonton, LA all made the playoffs. Only 3 teams from this division. If you're thinking, hold on, that math doesn't really make sense. Yeah, because it doesn't. 5 teams from the Central made the playoffs. So this year, I'm looking at this division at least thinking 4 of these teams could make the playoffs, possibly even 5. I'd have to look at the Central and see what's up over there. But just looking at it now, I don't think it's going to be another year where only 3 teams from this division make it. So those top 4 teams who we just talked about, I think all have a realistic good shot at making the playoffs this year.
Yeah, this division did get a little bit better. So, yeah, I agree. I'm looking at, an extra team or 2 to make it into the postseason.